and welcome to Josef's Model Railway, yes indeed, and Toy Room. Oh, we're in the right spot now, and believe it or not, we're very much loading. No idea. Anyway, welcome back to the Dad's Army Loop. This is going to be a brief one because I'm not really going to go through much. You just saw a previous video just recently on the faulty towers loop of where I tried something a little bit different using this type of plastic for creating the super elevation or positive camber where the track is slightly tilted so it curves around. And I was talking about I might need to come back and correct something on here, and that's exactly where we are today. Now I'm not going to bore you with the processes, I'll hack out and do what I need to do, but here's what I just noticed. Remember, this loop is a little bit more special than the other one because we have a third line, and it's this one that basically follows what would be a fourth radius curve, which tucks all the way around here and then travels on down to the fiddle yard, which means we can press this area. So what I'm trying to do here is we're using a second and third radius respectively to bring us up. A couple of quick tips and tools that I was using to where we are today. The first one is that you may all be aware of a product called the Pico Track Setter. It's a tremendous investment to make sure all your tracks are running in the correct alignment, especially if you're using the Pico Streamline, Code 100, 75 Bullhead, whatever Pico track formation you're using. But if you're going to use the Flex Track or Streamline stuff to customize your layout, so be it. In retrospect, I should have just stuck with standard third and fourth radius, linked them together and followed it around. But because I started off, because I'm quite a Hornby fan and was starting in that direction, to make sure I was getting the right geometry on it, was Hornby obviously use first, second, third and fourth radius track. And as a result though, there's a slight difference between that and the Pico set track, but truthfully nothing to stress about. So I found a chap that knocks up these little 3D printed stencils, fourth, third, first and second track radiuses, where you can slot them into as you're carrying on to make sure you're basically following that natural curve that you're trying to achieve. And that is what I did do, which brings me to the second point. This is of course the Pico way gauge, used for so many things. Two configurations. We've got the two that are close together, which is for the streamline, which is when we come up to here, which is exactly, I want to optimize the space and I can have the coaches running without bumping into each other, and on a larger curve, no problems at all. But when we're working in here, we really need to use the outer ones, which is exactly, if we look at this picture now, what we did on the other loop. Of course, we had the room, but most importantly, we've got that extra spacing accordingly. So how bad is it here? Do we really have to do this? We managed to make it all fit and work. Yes, we did. Let's just take a look at this for a moment. We've got a coach partway coming up onto the incline, and another one decides to come along. Whether it's going up or down, doesn't matter. That's not going to work now, is it? So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to make that work. We can be a little bit generous with the lower level there because that's a manually controlled operation. So if a train does need to be coming up, we would certainly be aware of it. There'll be a signal to halt it and stop it further up if there's traffic on the line. Of course, I'm the only operator and there's never going to be more than 2 or 3 running at any one time. But the whole idea here is that that's okay. We do have the clearance here. Indeed, if I did take it, we do have the clearance running across here, that it doesn't matter if I'm holding a consist running here, can wait while whatever train on this line has passed it, and away we go. So what are we going to do to correct this? Because it's been a bit of a pig's breakfast. Well, it's reasonably simple. We are running this second loop. We can't go any tighter than that. Truthfully, we can. I've run these coaches on a first radius before on my original Hornby track map, and I had no problems at all. Yeah, it didn't really flow and look too good, but it's not too bad. And even on the second one, it's a bit of a turn, but I want the functionality. I still get my third line down, plus I get 2 so I can have the 2 dog and tails chasing each other around my layout. So the way we're actually going to correct it is we can't do much with the second radius. I'm not even going to bother trying to squeeze it in anymore. That's just ridiculous. What we can do though is expand the third one out a bit, and we've got some room to move. In fact, this spare section we cut out, I actually haven't done anything with. I could bring it up, I could bring it down. Most likely it's just gonna sit and tuck in, and I'll probably glue and clamp it to sit up to give me a bit more of a shoulder, which becomes a little more logical now as I open the track out. So that time, by the time I've built it up around with a bit of sculptor mold and then ballasted it, it really looks like I did just carry on in the right fashion. So as before in the previous video, this is of course our third radius track, of which we can obviously follow to make sure we're tracking in a reasonably right direction. And we're going to take our Pico weigh gauge and we're going to need to come out. Now you can see how far I'm going to need to come out to make this work. That's being exceptionally generous. I won't have to quite come out that far, but the reality is we're going to need to open this track out accordingly. The great news is we did lay it down using the copy decks, which means it's quite easy to lift off. The downside is lifting off what we were using, the plastic zip ties to give us that super elevation. I don't really see this is going to be a big problem, but we've got to get started. So we're going to have to make the cut in the track somewhere down here, and then we'll just keep opening it up. As you can see here, as I'm bringing these coaches up, it's not touching, but we're literally talking about 1 millimeter gap there. So it's kind of my point. It's not all bad coming up here. We don't have to open the track up too much. We've still got some reasonable little bump here. It's not a scary amount we're going to need to move, well within the tolerance of where our existing cork sits, but we're still going to have to do this. And of course, as we come back to the top here, again to here, it's not until we basically, and what's giving us the great advantage, which you probably can't see in that camera angle, is because we're tilting with the super elevation. Because we're tilting, we're actually avoiding a lot of the hitting there anyway. But as we come up to the top here, we're quite good. So realistically, we're probably going to take it from here and then just start to open it up. Now it's no good just trying to get away with opening it up. I know the tracks are gonna have to expand, and we're gonna have to cut and relay it again. The good news is this trapdoor was correct. So with anything I need to feed my hands under, there's only probably 1 feet of cable I can see here that will need to possibly be adjusted. And as I said, I just need to bring that out slightly. I think we're gonna get away with it. But either way, let's lift it up and see what we can come up with, shall we? I am very glad that I noticed this before we started ballasting and carrying on. We're also still at the point where there's still just that little 1/2 meter section that'll finally close up these 2 lines, and we can then get a train going on it. But much better to make sure that we're going to have a train running around it smoothly before we discover any major headaches that will be a problem to fix after we have done the ballasting and landscaping. Plus it gives me a great excuse because I never was too happy with the way this got laid down with the sleepers. And as we saw with the faulty towels loop, that is just silky smooth all the way, and we need to try and keep that going. Again, we tried a track lane concept thanks to Chadwick Model Railway, who I've basically debunked in the first 10 minutes of doing it, and as a result corrected the original section already. Now we'll come and do this, and we'll go back to the formula that has been working for me.
Hypnotic illusions don't tear people apart.
How do we say to the youth of today? All is fun in Mother Nature's way. So many problems and no attention. The government runs in the wrong direction. It's in a small time and we're running on big crime. The man in uniform, no friend of mine. Money, the devil, the earth, my God. Satan's material form will rob. Into the world with empty hands I see. But I'm even the same, I understand as me. Knowledge important with peace and love. But I open my mind, I get shot from above. Brothers and sisters are dying. Hunger and pain, well it keeps multiplying. War is no victory, no lesson to learn. Trial and error, wrong, you learn. A reality, come on. Reality, come on, reality with a badass.
Between you and me, I don't think they really are police at all. But here we are. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get rid of these so-called police officers now. And it's been a pretty hardcore night. So the typical sitcoms that I enjoy watching in the background when I'm noodling away over this, things like Seinfeld and Frasier, well, they finished at midnight tonight, which says to you, I've been at this for 4.5 hours. So now the infomercials start, and it's time for me, I think, to go to bed, because we've come a long way here in this one evening. We've ripped up all of that horrible old piece and destroyed cork and the bad copy decks, corrected where we needed to. Simultaneously, remember when we were laying our super elevation with our plastic, including, as you see in the footage, I still had to cut the additional lengths as well. We laid our first layer down, which was the 1/2 mil, and then as we came in part way to bring it up to the 1 mil, I literally just started gluing straight away again. As it was drying, we went back in the opposite direction, and we grabbed the track, the existing stuff, came back, corrected it up, brought in a new length here, had to do a bit of tightening, a little bit of a tidy up with a bit of the wiring here, but that's okay, and we've just used a couple of Pico power feed joiners, and we're going to need to obviously now just link the last bit up. But ladies and gentlemen, I apologize. I don't know what happened, but once I had uploaded the video to YouTube, the last 10 minutes of it completely disappeared. So I've just had to manage to go back and put it back together the best way I can. It might not look as polished and as smooth as it originally did. This is just the world of modern technology. Well, that's now been a solid 24 hours since we just reattached this base bit up to start correcting the bottom here. So it's now time that we're going to remove our clamps and see where we're at. The ultimate bending position is made for the ultimate test. Let's see if what we did has fixed our problem. That's an absolute winner. Success, success, winner, winner, chicken dinner. I apologise for this camera work. I'm not going to get the gimbal out for this, but the reason why I'm just going to bring it in is the overhead shot didn't quite have the definition to show how much space we'd achieved, since the rooftops of the coaches are leaning and I need to lean a bit with them. But you can see the space we've got in between now is much more acceptable. And even if we come down, which is where we had this bit of a more trouble area, let's put some cork there and stop that one from going any further. And we come around, that's quite a graceful amount of space there. That's certainly nothing we need to be concerned about. And even if we come down here and they're coming around accordingly, whoop, that was me bumping it there, we're going to have no problems at all. Nothing's bumping or touching there. Everything looks fantastic, and we are very much back on track with this one. Ah yes, now we're really starting to look a bit more practical, and as you saw in that magical footage there, everything's running exceptionally smoothly. What's so good about it is, in fact, our super elevation is achieved just perfectly, as you can see in these next couple of pictures. But of course it comes at the slight result here, where while we've come around and lifted the extra section up, which we can obviously create a bit of a rock fall or bricked pavers making their way down through the fiddle yard, it leaves us with a little bit of overhang just on the particular sleepers there. Now we could just fill it in with ballast over time, but it's quite a waste of ballast. So I thought what we might do, take some of this foam board, and let's get this right. Because years ago, I did a little modeling project where I was just using styrofoam as a bit of a filler. The sort of nasty stuff you get in packaging that if you sort of rub it the wrong way, little bits end up going everywhere. And this type of foam and these other types of one, this is not the stuff. They have a lot of reaction when you come along with different types of glue. It can react, it can implode, it can just be a mess. So we're talking about this, which you will have seen a lot of other people building their model kits on. So it's more of an extruded type of a foam that's thicker, quite manageable. We can use any type of basic blade and just carve it and shape it as we need. I actually also bought this magic little tool as well, which you can turn in either way, which is good for marking it, cutting a straight line, and or as you can see here, we can twist it around to get the bevel and get those 45-degree cuts where possible. It's a shame the blade's not a fraction longer, but at least we've got that thing and we could always fabricate something different. We're not doing anything on any accurate scale here. The process here is we're gonna trim some of this off into some manageable bite-sized chunks, and we're just gonna come in and correct it. Like, we are literally talking about, what, 1 or 2 centimeters at the worst, because a lot of it actually comes back in here where you wouldn't even need it. Once it's done though, we're not going to quite stop there and wait for ballast. I will take just a little, mix up a little batch of sculptor mold, and we'll just gently shape it around here. Again, I don't want to create a complete fall running straight down. I still want to have a little bit of a lip here that could be accessed by some foot traffic, or just enough to get a utility truck through if they absolutely needed to for whatever reason. Break off that problem where it looks too much like there could be a landslide or an avalanche. You've sort of thought about it a little bit. Quick update on where we are. We've taken our foam board at the moment and we've just rudimentarily shaped it around and come into place. This is actually now dry and the pins are ready to be removed. But I thought I might as well just get started on the inside section while I'm here. Remember, as we go down to the fiddle yard at the moment, this section of track is effectively floating. So I'm attaching just a thin bead of the styrofoam here, just so the ballast looks a bit realistic. We don't have to worry how this sort of will disappear into the background, blue skies or what have you. Don't worry about it. But I did just need to use some zip ties just to hold it while the glue was grabbing. Again, it is the Gorilla Glue that does expand, so it really works well and also fills in the gaps nicely. Girls and boys, ladies and gentlemen, we're now going to conclude this video. As you can see, I'm not going to keep going too much regarding our edging at the moment, because we've got to get the geometry of that cricket pitch in. I have got I'm just waiting on the delivery for this back wall with a bit of stonework archway that will fill in. So we've got everything we need to do, we can carry on. And once we've got that, we can then come along with the sculptor mold to sort of smooth it all out and give it that beautiful finish and carry on. And of course, as I said, coming down to this fiddle yard is a little bit complicated at the moment. So we'll take our time coming back and clean the edging up later on. But the focus will be sort of jumping in from now. And we do have our functionality of the track working. As always, the tracks were always actually still on the timber section that's been cut out, but of course by allowing this bit more of a shoulder around it, certainly if you were a passenger on the train looking out the window, it's not quite as horrific as just seeing a straight out drop that's falling off. Again, I've still got a bit of clearance to work at here, so the coach that's traveling underneath can clear it, so I can't really do much else. Who knows how we're going to fill this up? Probably just some trees, scenery, I have no idea. But it is refreshing now to just comfortably be able to see this running in this thing, because the whole idea is when these trains are running, they're just running around. I haven't got time to be, I'm not an operator that's trying to operate it. I like to just let them run and have a great time. On all of the stuff that we're constructing, I'm still very cautious of leaving a reasonable gap, because I know we're going to be slapping some sort of a back scene down here. So it's all designed with practicality in mind. But as we can see now, that now concludes this video. Look, thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure. We'll see you in the next one. Stay safe. Toodles.